Okay, guess what? This is our last checkpoint of the year. So grab those geobooks. We're going to take some notes on similar polygons. So we've already talked about dilations, and when you dilate an image or a polygon, you create similar polygons. So if you look here, we have two polygons. They're actually trapezoids, and they're similar, which means that they have the same shape but different size. And when you have two similar polygons, all corresponding angles must be congruent. Okay, so angle L corresponds to angle X. We can see that those two are congruent. And M would have to correspond with W. N would correspond with Z. And O with angle Y. So what we can do is write a similarity statement. We've written congruency statements. Well, now we can write a similarity statement. So what we would do is we'd put trapezoid. We would write trapezoid, and we'll go in order. Trapezoid L, M, N, O is similar to trapezoid, and the order matters. We're going to want whatever goes with L to be written first, and that would be X. And what corresponds with angle M? It would have to be W. And N would correspond with Z. And O with Y. So this is called a similarity statement. Similarity statement. Okay, and this symbol means similar. Okay, remember congruent looks like that, but it has the equal sign below it. So it's similar to that, but not quite. So you'll be able to read a similarity statement and know how to label all the angles, the congruent angles. Okay, on to your notes section. Our first problem asks us to solve for x given the two similar quadrilaterals. So go ahead and pause the video and draw the two pictures. And don't forget to write your title and the date. Okay, so with these two similar trapezoids or quadrilaterals, we can solve for missing sides given the information that we have. So what you want to do first is find the sides that you know will go together, or the two sides that are similar. So I know that 3 and 6 would be what we call proportional. And I know that because of the angle marks. So if you look here, I have a 1 and a 4. So the length of 6 is between the angles 1 and 4. And here I have 1 and 4, and that goes with 3. So that's an easy way to figure out what goes with what. Okay. And then I also know that x plus 1 would have to go with x plus 3. So what you do to solve for x is you set up a proportion. So what you do is, we could start with the side that has the 6. So we write a proportion. Put 6 over whatever else I circled, which would be 3, is equal to, a proportion is two ratios that equal to each other. Okay, now if I start with the 6, I have to start with the second fraction with the x plus 3. So I'm going to put is equal to x plus 3 over x minus 1. So we set up what's called a proportion. Do you remember how to solve a proportion? Well, if you're thinking cross multiply, That's good. So we cross multiply. You probably remember that from algebra. Cross multiply. Okay, so what happens when we cross multiply is we're going to multiply the 6 times x minus 1 and set that equal to what happens when we multiply the other two numbers. It would be 3 times x plus 3. Okay, now once you cross multiply, now you have an equation that we need to solve, and the first step would be to distribute. So we're going to distribute, and that gives us 6x minus, don't forget to multiply that 6 into both numbers, right? So 6 times x and 6 times negative 1 would give us 6x minus 6 equals, and we need to distribute that 3 into both numbers, so it would be 3x plus 9. Okay, now we need to get our variables to one side. So subtract 3x to both sides. And we end up with 3x minus 6 equals 9. So these will cancel. Almost there. We're going to add 6 to both sides. And we get 3x equals 15. And once we divide by 3 on both sides, we end up with x equals, cross those out, 15 divided by 3, 5. So x equals 5. So let's just review real quick what we did. We found the sides that would go together, and we were able to find that by looking at the angle marks, matching them up. We set up a proportion. So we started with the bigger quadrilaterals. So we did 6 over the side that it's similar to, so 6 over 3. We have to go back to this one because we started with it, x plus 3 over x minus 1. Then we cross-multiplied, and solved, and we solved for x, and we got 5. Okay, on to problem 2. This time we have to solve for x and y. And we know that these two triangles are similar because of the angles. So if you have angles that are all congruent, so we have these two angles are congruent, these two angles are congruent, and these two. So corresponding angles that are congruent, you know that you have two similar shapes. So because they're similar, we can find the sides that would be similar and solve for any missing sides. So let's go ahead and mark whatever sides would be similar to each other. So first let's find the side that would go with 6. So if you look, we have 2 marks, 3 marks. Over here we have 2 marks, 3 marks. So we know that 4 and 6 would go together. And how about we look for what goes with 8? I like to use different shapes for the different matches. So 8 is in between the 1 and 2 angles, so 1 and 2. That would have to be similar to the side that's labeled Y. And then let's use a heart. So the 7 would have to go with, the 7 would have to go with X. Okay, so same as the last problem, to solve for your missing variable, you set up a proportion. Now, you don't want to pick the two that we don't know. So you want to start with a pair that you do know. So we know that 6 goes with 4. So we're going to choose those. So 6 over 4 is equal to, and we just have to do one set at a time. So 6 over 4 is equal to, we can start with the hearts. So 7 and x. So 7 over x. So 7 over x. Okay, and I might as well set up my other proportion. I'll go ahead and do it down here at the bottom. We go with 6 over 4 is equal to, and we'll work with the squares, 8 over y. So 6 over 4 is equal to 8 over y. Now we do what we did on the last problem. We cross multiply. So I'll go over here. So 6 times x equals 4 times 7. So 6 times x equals 4 times 7. 6x equals 28. We're going to divide by 6 on both sides. And x is going to equal 4.7. Okay, I rounded to the nearest tenth. So the length of x would be 4.7, or the length for x. All right, when we come over here to solve for y, we do the same thing. We're going to cross multiply. So we get 6 times y equals 4 times 8. So that would be 6y equals 32. Divide by 6 on both sides. And y is going to equal whatever 32 divided by 6 is. And I used my calculator. I got 5.3. So we found the two missing sides of the second triangle. Okay, problem 3, we need to solve for x. And so we can see all the angle marks, which will help us find the sides that would be put together. So let's start by matching up what goes together. So we'll start with 8. What do you think 8 would correspond to or be similar to? Well, it's in between the two angles 1 and 2, so 1 and 2, so it would have to go with 12.8. Okay, now let's look at the 6. So 6 is on the side that has angles 1 and 3. So 1 and 3, it would have to be similar to the side labeled X. Okay, so that means that 5 and 8 would be together. Those are some ugly hearts. Oh well. Okay, so now that we have everything marked, we're going to set up a proportion to solve for our missing side. So you want to pick a pair that you do know. So we have choices. We can pick 8 and 5, or we can pick 8 and 12.8. I'm thinking you're probably going to pick 8 and 5 because you probably want to avoid that 12.8. I don't blame you. That's what I would want to choose too. So we're going to put 5 over 8. So notice I chose the 5, which means I'm starting with the smaller triangle. So the smaller triangle would have to be in the numerators, and then the larger triangle would be in the denominator. So 5 over 8 is equal to, we're looking at solving for x, so we would have to put the 6 first because it's on the smaller triangle. So 6 over x. Okay, next step, cross multiply. To solve for our variable, we get 5 times x equals 8 times 6. So that would be 5x equals 48. We're going to divide both sides by 5. And now I just need to use my calculator to divide 48 by 5. And I get 9.6. So the length of x would be 9.6. Not too bad, right? Find the sides that would go together, mark them with different shapes, then set up a proportion, cross multiply, and solve your equation. Okay, last problem. This one I want you to try on your own. So draw the picture, then pause it, and then I want you to give this a try, solving for x. Okay, so it'll probably take you a few minutes. I'll meet you back here in a couple minutes to check your answer. Okay, so hopefully you have an answer. Let's see if you got it right. So we need to find the sides that are corresponding, and we're going to mark them with different shapes. We're going to label them. So we'll start with, the 29 looks pretty good. So the 29 corresponds with the 14.5. So those two sides are similar. The x you should have marked with the 10. And the 21 with the 10.5. Now you have choices. What do you want to use in our proportion? Okay, so looks like we're going to have to deal with decimals no matter what. So I'll just go ahead and go with the hearts. So we're going to start with the hearts. So 21 over 10.5 equals, now because we started with the 21, we have to go back to that same triangle and go with the x. Okay, you can't switch them around and put the 10 first. It has to be the x. Okay, so you should have set it up like that. Now, if you chose to use the 29 and the 14.1, that's no problem. Okay, that just means that you would have right here a 29, and right here you'd have a 14.5. Okay, but that's fine, whatever you decided to do. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and cross multiply. Okay, so when we cross multiply, we get 10.5x equals 21 times 10. Okay, so we get 10.5x equals 210 when you multiply those two together. Now you're going to divide both sides by the coefficient, 10.5. Okay, now you just need to use a calculator to get what x is. Okay, so you should have got 20. So 210 divided by 10.5 is 20. So your missing side was 20. So even if you chose to use the 29 and the 14.5, you still get the answer of 20. All right, good. Did you get that one right without any help? I hope so. That would be really cool. Okay, well, I hope you're having an awesome day and you took really good notes. We'll practice more in class. And that's about it.